human and technical that were released by the documents. Now, strangely, mostly documents that are leaked appear in major news organizations, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, whatever. They never appear on gaming platforms, so this is a first for that. It's hard to say why any of this stuff is appearing or why it's appearing on those platforms. Usually there's three reasons for spying. That was one of the reasons I wrote Spyfield, because there are so many spies out there that the U.S. never ends up catching. And there's three main reasons.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and what a beautiful, beautiful day. I think we're about due for some new, warm, sun-drenched beauty in our lives, and I think the universe is delivering that to us right now. I hope you're enjoying it. Take time today to get out. Enjoy your neighborhood, your community, the lakes, the rivers, just being outside and not having to be bundled, though bundling is always cool as well. Well, today we want to begin by once again inviting you to support this program. Our gratitude to KFAI, our partnership there. The Conversation with Al McFarlane is also streamed live nationally through the website of the Black Press of America, Black Press USA. On YouTube and the Black Press USA Facebook page. So you may be connecting with us from anywhere around the world through those platforms. We thank you. We want you to support us. And you may be connecting to us locally or beyond in the digisphere through Twitter, through LinkedIn, or through Facebook, the Insight News pages for all of those. Wherever you are, thank you again. Thank you. Do us a favor. Go over to, if you're online, go over to the YouTube Insight News page and subscribe to our channel. We want to grow our channel, figure out ways to connect with more people around the world, around the community. We want to connect with you. So go to Insight News YouTube channel and subscribe, like, and share. We want to get 1,000 people signed up and grow from there. And your acting will put us in that direction. We thank you in advance for that. Today's program, as always, I promise a robust conversation. And I'm pleased to have as my guest today one of the stellar spiritual and political and economic leaders, social leaders in our community. And one of the elders, we call her Mother Atum Azzahir. Sister Atum, good afternoon. Welcome once again to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Brother Al. Thank you so much. I also just want to say, though, that I call you Brother Al, but it's my understanding that many of the young ones in the community have now initiated you into Elder Al. So, Elder Al, great to see you.
Well, thank you so much. And let me open and greet you with the Ankh Uja Seneb. That's the instruction I'm learning through my class on hieroglyphic and ancient or Middle Egyptian. And I'll ask you to share again the significance of that greeting, Ankh Uja Seneb.
Well, I think that a couple of things. One is that people hear us talk about Hotep often, and we have come to think of Hotep as one of the most, I think, well-known and also widely practiced greetings, because it is really, I come in peace. And I wish you peace, rest, and freedom. And so, assalamu alaikum, and the questions around many of the religions really starts with this concept of I come in peace, I offer you peace. I think the other one is that the ideas around the Kemet, Kemet is what we often think of as the country university for African thought and spirituality. And so at the core of that is healthy ways of living, healthy ways of thinking. Ma'at, as many people also know, is really the concept about the law, the cosmic law that guides us. So we are constantly looking for ways to bring to you these concepts. And I'm grateful that you're studying the Medu and that you're studying the language, because the script is also one of the major ways that we at the Cultural Wellness Center invite people to understand that the script, different than the alphabet, opens inside of you a connection to the voice and the spirit of the creator. So it's the thoughts of the creator. So health and wellness, peace and freedom is all wrapped in the greeting that we bring to you today.
Well, that's awesome. And I love talking about Kemet and the Africana way of knowing. I think
Yes.
We have to begin to be intentional and consistent in
Yes.
identifying that we have a bona fide, genuine, authentic approach to our analysis of both what has happened and what will happen, and that approach helps us frame what we do, what we say, where we go, how we go,
Yes.
in the moment that we are in. And it allows us to sort of manage this awareness of our particular part of eternity.
Yes.
It lets us understand that the breaths that we take each moment are part of a continuum that is without beginning and without end.
Yes.
And therefore it has power. And if
Yes.
we are conscious of it, we can mobilize and direct that
That's
power.
correct.
That is the work of being alive in this form at this time, as I see it. But I enjoy having conversations like this. All of it leads to how do we empower our people. And our people I'm talking about, obviously, Mother Atum begins with us as African people.
Yes.
But it ultimately, and consistent with that, means all people.
Yes.
Everybody, every human being.
Yes.
And ultimately, we can talk about the relationship between all of us as humans with every other living thing
That's correct.
in other dimensions. And so it opens up a way of connection and connectivity that is generic, that's wholesome, and that is aware, conscious, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a couple of we've been studying recently the idea of a conscious consciousness.
Mhm.
So we think about often many of our people who are actually, as you mentioned, African centered or African systems of thought, who has taken us to the idea that we are not racialized actually. And
Mhm.
racialization is something that came, of course, as a way of victimizing us, but that we think of ourselves, when we think of ourselves, we think of what is it that is going to connect us to the thoughts of the creator, and that we have direct access to the creator's way of thinking, the creator's thoughts, and that this idea of aligning and being conscious of our consciousness is like often people now are using intentionality all over the place. I am intentionally, but this consciousness, we are conscious. I am conscious that I'm a person of African heritage, But now I have to be conscious of my consciousness and very, very aware that as I walk, as I talk, as I think, that there is not just a listening ear to what I'm saying, but there is an eye upon me. So we are really thinking of the consciousness being an awareness, but also an eye on that awareness, or an eye inside of that awareness that gives me the capacity to say, I do, and I know, and I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really are. I appreciate you bringing this up for us today, because we really are still connected to that concept of the creative principles acting through creation, but we're in many cases unconscious of it. So it's great to have it become a common conversation between us.
Yeah. Over dinner, over lunch.
Just a normal way of talking. Yes.
Right. You know, it reminds me, you know, I had either Herodotus or Plinius, one of those European or philosopher writers who discovered himself in Africa, wrote back that he was amazed when he encountered the Ethiopian people, and he described them as a race of philosophers. And so what that means, as I understand it, is what you just said. When we normalize thinking and acting in a way that reflects a living, viable, practical philosophy, philosophical thought.
Yes.
And so right now in our country, in our society, you know, we have our ordinary selves, and we assign to somebody else the role and the ranking of philosopher, as if we can't be that, or as if, and what if, however, our upbringing from the moment we arrive to the present moment is always viewed as, and
Yes.
in fact is, a path of philosophical consciousness,
Yes.
living at a different level. That must have been what the guy was referring to when he stumbled upon a continent of people whose every thought, every word sounded to him like philosophy. What do you think about that?
And you know what's so great about that, though, is that many of us now think that we, you know, when you're what I often think of as the brothers on the corner,
Mm-hmm.
are such amazing philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing philosophers.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, you know, we began to think that you had to go away to some kind of school or some kind of isolated place to become a philosopher. But I like what you said about that this concept, you know, of philosophy and the word itself, you know, is kind of the lover of wisdom. And so that is what I think all of us are still seeking, and on a day-by-day basis, trying our best to move into, is this wisdom that is ancient, and that it has been proven, you know, through many centuries. It has been proven to be what gives us the capacity to endure. It's what gives us the capacity, you know, to greet people, no matter who they are, what they've come from, and also what they've done. Because that's another thing I constantly remind us, is that we are so receptive to life. Back to the point about Ankh. Life is such an intricate part. Life and living, health and wisdom is what we seek. And I think we, in this society now, of course, you know, satisfaction and personal and individual satisfaction has taken the place of seeking, not satisfaction, but seeking meaning, and seeking ways, you know, of reconnecting and staying connected to what the creator and the creation really do naturally.
I'm Alan McFarlane. My guest is Mother Atum Azzahir. She is the founder and principal at the Cultural Wellness Center in Minneapolis, but doing a lot of stuff to bring awareness, consciousness, healing in our community here and abroad as well. Well, Sister Atum, I wanted you to talk about, give us an update. Last time you were on, you talked about the question of rest. And you've got a project. I'm looking at a headline now in the Sunday Pioneer Press. I think it said that St. Paul activist Melvin Giles was one of 7 to receive a $55,000 grant. I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah, for rest and recuperation.
Yes.
So before I ask you to talk about that, the thought comes in my mind, it pops in my head. The sign of God is a movement and a rest. A movement and a rest. So how does that apply to this activity that you have launched in community?
Elder, the one thing about rest that I think is worthy to talk a little bit about is that they talk about, and on the 7th day, God rested. Well, once again, it gets back to this idea of rest is not what it has come to be in this time and in this day and in this society. So when you think about God, God never stops to rest. The divine is continuous. The divine force does not take off day or night. The divine does not, actually, there is no not in the divine. So even as I speak, I often have to check myself because we don't necessarily say the divine is not. Actually, it's only the divine is.
Mm-hmm.
The divine is. So work and rejuvenation and reviving and giving and bringing life every moment with every breath is what is work. So as we think about the resting for us, I think, and the older I get, the more I realize that resting is really closely connected to meaning and to serving and to being in alignment and recognition that life and death is a mirror of each other. So that's how I think we're beginning to invite our brothers and sisters who are really being recognized right now, is invite them for the conversation to see that, because they had such a difficult time with trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do to rest, or rest as in stop working. But we are really beginning to hear and see that rest is much more related to being able to not worry about food, shelter, and clothing. The article that you mentioned with Brother Melvin and who he is to how he is, there were just some difficulty. He could not understand being selected. I mean, he was totally surprised, in spite of the fact that he submitted and someone encouraged and, as a matter of fact, cajoled him and talked him into applying. And when he
didn't expect it, though. He didn't expect it.
He did not expect it and couldn't believe it. And then he couldn't believe that there was money going to be invested in him taking time to think, to reflect, to, as a matter of fact, we encourage people to make a note of your past contributions, to reflect upon the things you've done very well, and it's almost like just a moment to think. So that's how I feel it's tied to the divine and tied to the idea of God, is that it really is about deepening the work, deepening it in and bringing it consistent with how creation came into being. Does that sound like highfalutin to you? And,
No,
all of that?
I think it sounds like understanding that we should take the time to evaluate and to put new language, or not new, but the proper language around something that's critical, that's important, that we simply don't pay enough attention to. And as I
That's
hear you
right.
speak, Mother Atum, I'm hearing and visualizing the idea of rest being one of the ways we work.
Correct.
Rest as an active activity.
Correct.
It's not suspending activity. It's doing something else.
That's
And
correct.
moving to rest with the same intensity that we move towards moving boxes at our job, or moving our bodies and our community from one part to another part of the city in a car. Those are things that, using the word again, intentionality, we do, intending to do it. But resting, seen differently, is seen, from what I understand you saying, to see resting as not the surrender, but the pursuit, the action. It's an active activity, and it's part of the healing and restorative process. Now, am I sounding right?
Oh,
Am I
yes. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think one of the other things that I want to that came up for those who were participating, both those who were applicants, people who were interviewed, I continue to let people know that we had 162 applicants,
Wow.
and that was just the people who got their application in within a time frame. But there were also 4,000 people who were on the website asking questions and showing interest. And so this 162 whose applications came in, we had a team of 10 people who really reviewed every applicant and was able to really look at the applications, not according to what had they done in life. So some people, had many degrees and these accomplishments. Those accomplishments were looked upon. In the case of this particular application, we were asking people not to write about those accomplishments, but the ones that had to do with what we think of as, what will you do to rest? How do you find rest? What are your purpose? What is your purpose, and your meaningful efforts? And what do you need to take some time out from? So I think that, to me, was a very, very instructive process. It was so instructive. These are the initiatives that you have posted: Karina Smith, Farji Shahir, Deja Joel, Princess Titus are the ones that you, and as you look at the work that they do, it isn't like physical work. Brother Anura CSR.
Amazing.
Yes. Brother Antonio Williams, Melvin Giles. And what we really, what I heard from those 7 people is that they will not be able to get over the honor that they felt for the rest of their lives. And that this honor, this investment in them, and most of them have not won awards or any of that kind of thing before. But this investment in them means an investment in everything from eliminating white supremacy and racism to building a core educational program for young people. So developing a curriculum that has to do with culture and heritage and spirituality, developing a connection to sleep. There's lots of stuff around not knowing even how to sleep at night or not knowing how to breathe. So these are people who are dealing with real basic things, but at the same time, never having had time to just focus on that. So that's it's really a powerful way for these activists, for healers, activists, artists to be coming together under this particular type of investment.
And the project is called the Black Legacy Leadership Enhancement Initiative. That's the name
Enrichment.
of it?
Mhm.
Enrichment.
Yes.
Tell me about where the idea came from. When did you think of it? Who thought of it? And how did you move it from a thought into an actual program that had the opportunity to collect and gather resources and deliver to the service of the idea?
The idea came from a very strong group of people, one in particular that many of us know, who were on a racial justice committee for the Polet Family Foundation. The Polet family made a commitment about 2 years ago, following the uprising. They made a commitment to really take a look at themselves, their way of investing in community, their way of providing support and help, to others. And they wanted to really take a stronger look at what would community want to see the money used for. And so several community activists who are on the Racial Justice Committee came up with the idea of investing in a point of rest, because many people see racism, white supremacy, as this kind of having such an impact and such a deep, continuous, constant, cross-generational impact on the African-born in America, that is you have to work hard to get up every morning. You have to work hard to walk out into the public. And so people talked about their jobs and their activism. One of the men, who is an initiate, talked about being in prison, talked about the reason that he ended up in prison, and was looking at himself, not blaming someone else, but looking at himself and seeing what took him down that road. What took him down that road? What were the things that he did that took him down that road, that he now wants to make sure that he is teaching and holding the hand of other people, men and young women, to go, so that they don't end up where he did. So he's teaching, and you know what he's actually teaching, Brother Al, because he learned it because he was once again in solitary once again studying was ancient Kemet. He came out having discovered the knowledge and is now teaching it. So I think the point is, those who gave it this vision are those who have experienced this lack of rest and peace within themselves and constant working. That's where it came from.
Well, let me just give you a reflection. And I love these conversations because every time we talk, ideas, memories, connections pop up that I'm always eager to share. And I just want to take a second to say that as you were speaking, the image came to my mind of a radio show where a person was doing one of the WPA projects to capture the stories of the last living African people that had been enslaved. And this might have been, I think, either Michael Lomax, or one of the Lomax scholars interviewing someone. I'm not sure if it was in Georgia, Mississippi, or Louisiana, but it was down south. And the person was a relative of his. And he asked the elder, might have been his grandfather, what was it like being a slave? And just got a quizzical look. you know. And he said, I mean, who did you work for? And you could almost see this conversation over the radio in your mind's eye. The gentleman, the elder, the black man that had been enslaved said, work for, question mark. Who did I work for? That question implies I had a choice.
Yes.
Right? Who did I work for? He said, we were slaves. We were enslaved. He said we were slaves. That was the word he used. And it meant to him that every moment of his life was controlled.
Yes.
And you mentioned the question of us having this cultural trauma, this experience,
Yes.
traumatic, and where the inability to rest was hardwired into our experience as we lived as property of other human beings who, with intention, programmed themselves to try to program us so that we would always be at the other end of vital, at the point of desperation, and at the point of exhaustion. And so that's the thought that came to my mind. And that's why this question of rest really resonates right now, because we are all coming out of that legacy of what I think, and I would call a criminal enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah. So just my thoughts.
One of the key, really thought leaders for this was a sister whose name is Leslie Redmond. And once again, you know, this is a woman who has studied and worked, and she was a part of a significant movement for the African American through her volunteerism, but also, you know, through, once again, going to school and becoming a lawyer, not to make money, but to be able to think about this kind of legal mind, the strategic mind that's going to be required for us to, number one, recover ourselves, but also number two, to work in partnership with those who, in your story about who we worked for, but in her mind and in the minds of many who are the kind of first thinkers of this project, they were saying this question about reparations, and they talked about this whole idea: who will pay reparations on my soul? There's a book by that name, and they were asking that question. It wasn't so much the whole idea of the material, but if there are material resources accessible and available, that they should be invested in the repairing of the spirit and the soul of the people who have endured through this process. And that was the mindset that Leslie and the other people on this racial justice committee had. So they didn't want a street or a building. They wanted the internal, you know, almost like the, sometimes we talk about the temple, you know, the inner temple. Well, they wanted to invest in what I really think of as the inner temple of the African born in America. I think that they put the idea to the board, and the board really thought it was a great idea. The Cultural Wellness Center was selected by a group of people to be the kind of what we are is really the home for the initiative to be in community. So we always want to be what the community wants us to be. So we are the home for the initiative's 3 years of piloting the idea, working with the community to come up with a process that is able to hold this idea of repairing the spirit and the soul of our people, investment in the repairing. And so just consider that this is an investment in the repairing the spirit and the soul of our people, that we might then stand. Our contribution to the society has never stopped, no matter how exhausted we may have been. People did not know we were exhausted, and we certainly haven't been given any kind of credit for the level of exhaustion that we've endured. However, what we're saying is we don't get to stop now.
Mm-hmm.
We get to now take a moment, think deeply, work with one another, heal and nurture one another, and to be acknowledged by one another, which will give us the rest we deserve and need to be acknowledged that you have worked very hard. You now must go to the spa. You now must go on vacation. You now must take time to sleep at night and not worry about all those things that are knocking at your door. So that was the idea that they came up with. We are honored to be the keepers of that idea. And we work in partnership with the Paulette Family Foundation. The Paulette Family Foundation staff made a commitment to the Racial Justice Committee also that the community is the third partner. So it's the Cultural Wellness Center is a partner, but community is also a partner in this. Awesome. And so once again, I think that the way we see it as a part of our legacy, as you know, community is often the measure of our health. It's a unit of measure. Do we have community? Do we have culture? Do we have a sense of belonging to a people? Well, that's what the legacy is intended to build on, is that we are really bringing forward the legacy of our people, the healing practices of our people, and the way we work together. So it's really a powerful effort for us.
Sure. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is my friend, Mother Atum Azzahir. She's the leading light at the Cultural Wellness Center in Twin Cities here. We're talking about the initiative to promote legacy, leadership enhancement in the Black community, a project funded by the Paulette Foundation, recently announcing that 7 people in our community had been awarded grants of $55,000, I think, each to do what they perceive as the intentional pursuit of rest as part of their work in community. Well, let me take a minute, because I always assume that everybody knows what the Cultural Wellness Center is, but there probably is one person that doesn't have that knowledge. So I want to give that person an opportunity to learn about the origin and the work of the Cultural Wellness Center. And I'm going to go from there, Mother Atum, to ask you about you. Because I think all of it ties together, and that as we began, we talked about ancestors. Let's talk about ancestorship, ancestorhood, and the continuity of the ancient to the future that we stand in the middle of. So talk about cultural wellness, first of all, the center, the work.
Well, thank you so much. The cultural wellness approach is really a lot of what you and I have already talked about today. It is an approach. It is an approach to recovering, resurrecting African culture, African thought, and spirituality. The work that Elder Mahmoud and others have done to inform what I understand to be our experience in this country, to inform me and quite a number of other people by teaching Black history. What came forward for me was that as I looked at the people who gave birth to me, my mother and my father, and their mother and father, you know, I am just the 4th generation. I'm just the 4th generation who was not born in the slave system, in the plantation system. My great grandmother was born in 1861. And I have pictures of her, and I can see the similarity between herself and I. And the similarity is this kind of standing in such a way that you would not know what was happening in the environment around her, because what she had, she made the best of. She took the sacks, that meal and flour and so forth came in, and made dresses that had ruffles on them.
Mm.
And I tell that story because it's like, it is the story that really is symbolic of what it took for me to want to look at our history that I learned in, once again, in terms of when did enslavement happen? What happened to us? What was it that my parents survived? Even those laws that were on the books that said if we were taught to read and write, the person who was teaching us to read and write would be fined.
Mm-hmm.
And that my mother was not allowed to go to school. That my father had just enough schooling to learn how to read. And he learned how to read because he not voluntarily from my point of view, but he went into the army, into the armed services. So those are the kind of thoughts that gave me the vision of creating, according to, once again, Elder Mahmoud, you got to build an institution if you want the teaching to last.
Mm-hmm.
You got to build an institution. You have to institutionalize the vision. So that's really with lots of organizing, lots of vision that I did to bring the Cultural Wellness Center into existence. It, to me, is the way that I attempt to memorialize the survival of our people, my mother and grandmother and father and grandfather, and all those who have gone before me. So it is a place where the ancestors are constantly present. Constantly present. We've created this environment. So anytime you walk into the Cultural Wellness Center, you will feel their presence. And what we intend with that is that it's our responsibility to create the space, to hold the space, so that our people can come in, see themselves in the mirror of hope, in the mirror of excellence, in the mirror of being the longest living human on the planet. Mm-hmm. That's what they see, what people see when they come. And we attempt at our best to create that experience for Black people. So recurring efforts, prayer is one of the things that we build into once the ways that we talk with each other. It isn't like talking to someone that isn't present. We see that as getting together to remember. And the remembering is also a part of our writing and a part of our telling each other the stories of what happened to us, not what did we do, not that we're crazy, but as Brother Resmar teaches, what happened to us?
Happened? Something happened to us. Yeah.
That's right. And so the Wellness Center really wants to, the center and the approach is so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, every time you speak, you send my thoughts into 5 directions at one time, which is a wonderful thing because I like I can't get the right word for it, but it's like stereophonic, quadraphonic, right? It's one thing being said, but you can perceive it, receive it on a dozen different levels, and each one is true. Question number 1 was, did you know your great-grandmother? Did you know her personally?
I did not. She did live, though. My brother, I have one brother who's 5 years older than me, and she did live. He did see her, because, we lived in this very, very southern town in Mississippi, Houston and Vardaman and Calhoun City, Mississippi. I just read something recently that said it's like the Delta, and that area is the most southern place in the world, not just in the as it relates to how people think. It is a very, very, very fascinating thing. And so my brother did get to know her. And so he and my mother, once again, shared conversations about what they knew about her, and then her daughter, who is my grandmother. And then on my father's side, I just recently was honored with an award that's coming through the YWCA. And so I gave them pictures, because I have pictures of my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother, where we are all kind of sitting together to reflect on the kind of what sometimes people call sassiness. That's what they used to call it to them, that moved through our community, but it was survival. It was a kind of survival. And we can see that in the images of all the women. And so that award that I'm getting, I've pulled the pictures so that other people could see us together, those women who have gone before me. And I want to point out that when we talk about women and womanhood, we're actually talking about the healing vessels of our people, and the connection, the channels, if you want to get to the healing. We knew that the women were really the channel, the direct channels, that you could use to get through to, once again, you get through to the Creator.
I have behind me a photograph on my mantle. Maybe I've shared this with you before, but it's me as a 4-year-old or 5-year-old. And me and some first cousins are all sitting on the floor, cross-legged against adults who are sitting on the divan.
Yes.
The divan. And on that, sitting on the divan on the end is Mr. Powell, who was the owner of the house. We lived in a brownstone in Kansas City, Missouri. And Mr. Powell's family was on the first floor. My grandmother's family, the second floor, and my family, my mom and dad and sister and I, on the attic of the third floor, a 1-room or 2-room apartment on the third floor. On that divan, Mr. Powell, Mrs. Powell, then my grandmother, and next to her, her mother, my great grandmother, and next to her, my mother, right? And this picture's been sitting right behind me. Probably can't see it because of the sunlight. For as long as I've lived in this house, it's 1973. And then maybe about 10 years ago or so, I had this thought to grab it and look at it closely, and thought that, my grandmother's mother was born in 1860.
See?
I know someone, Mother Atum. I held someone. Someone held me.
Yes.
Who, when she was born, was the property of other human beings.
Yes.
That's how close it is.
That's how close it is. And that's what I'm saying to you. That's how close it is, because, you just have to know, you and I think that's the reason why sometimes when you ask about the cultural wellness, and that's why I continue to say it is a memorial. It is a place. It is a space. It is where the ancestors are present on a regular basis. I think that and people don't necessarily always see that as a concrete action to take to bring our people to freedom. And so it's so powerful to hear and to say that we were on their laps.
Yeah.
This is not a theoretical idea. We were on their laps.
This is lived experience.
Yes. And that is what I think I want to bring to our young people. And what the Cultural Wellness Center offers is rites of passage classes. We offer ceremonies. There are many ceremonies that we do that speak to this kind of what I talk about is the opening of the mouth ceremony, where people get to speak what it is that is, in many cases, choking them. The pain, the level of pain, the level of struggle, the level of denial. Often I say to people, you are accepted, you are acceptable, and don't let anybody ever question you on that. Or we may have to study, what is happening in Ramsey County that we can do and get involved in that will reduce the number of our children, who are going into child protection services. We may have to talk about and talk with, how many of our people are homeless, how many of our people are needing a place to live, how many of our people at this point in time, some of the experiences on a day-to-day basis. Today, Brother Al, I was at the Midtown Global Market, which the Cultural Wellness Center is one of the owners of the Midtown Global Market, which is where Robert now is going to be offering his culinary heritage, amazing foods for our people to come, and where we also will be doing events there, because that's another thing we do. I get in my car I go to my car in the parking ramp, and I see this number of police, walking through the parking ramp. And do you know, I pulled my car forward, and the woman said to me, "Did I hear something fall from your car?" This is the police officer. And do you know, she said, "Stop," because there was a pistol, this huge pistol that fell from my tires. Someone who they had arrested had come to my car and put a pistol up on the wheel of my car. And so when I moved to go forward, it fell. Wow. I was dumbfounded.
Oh, yes.
And even as I tell you this on the radio, if my children hear it, they're going to say, "See, I told you that you need to be careful." But this is what our people are. This is what we're struggling with on a regular basis. So what do we do about that? How do we heal that? That is the work the Cultural Wellness Center does. I want to be there so that the next time this young man, because I saw them taking him away with his hands, with his, and so what do we do? What do I do? What can I do to increase his understanding of the value of his life and the contributions that he can make for and with our people? That is the work that we do at the Cultural Wellness Center.
I'm gonna take the position of your children, Mother Atum, and say, think of all the what ifs. What if the weapon had discharged?
I understand.
What if there'd been a person in law enforcement who missed part of the transaction and started it just with your car and a weapon?
I understand.
And then went into some other automatic mode that unleashed an ugliness that would be. So it grips me to hear the story, but I come back through gratitude and to understanding that the ancestors are with us all the time.
That's correct. And I really,
guide us.
Yes. I really do think that you're right about that. And so I feel every single moment of every day, I feel the deep gratitude for being able to work with our people, no matter what level of struggle they're in. And so I don't want to be disconnected. Right. And I'm not going to be. And I do know that I have to be safe. But I can't worry so much about the safety as I have to worry about the connection to the Creator, to the ancestors, and to those who have gone before us. Think of the risk that they took to say hello, to make it clear that they love. Think of the risk they took. So my risks are paled in comparison to their risk. So that's how I'm thinking about it, and I know that the protection will be there for me.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Mother Atum Azzahir from the Cultural Wellness Center in Minneapolis. few minutes left. I'm just reacting to the words, to the feelings, the thoughts, the ideas that you bring, Sister Atum. And one that just rings in me, you've used it several times over the course of this conversation, and that is memory, remembering. And whenever I hear that and hear you say it and bring it into my understanding of this conversation, it brings me back to the voice and the teaching of your and my friend, Elder Mahmoud El-Kadi. And I remember one time sitting over at Lucille's Kitchen where he was one of the guest speakers. And he talked about remembering. And so, of course, that's a commonly used word. I remember this, I remember that, I forgot, I remember. He said, no. Think about dismember and remember.
That's
To
correct.
reconnect. Yes. And that's what you're talking about, is that connection, which is both divine and eternal, which is at the core of our existence, out of which we spring. That memory, and how do we activate that memory? So this morning in my Metu Nature class,
Yes.
I didn't watch the whole thing. Dr. Mario Beatty is the instructor. He's at Howard University. And this was like every week. I'll tell people how to get into it. It's so exciting.
Yes.
He talked
Please.
about Imhotep, and he was talking about one of the great pyramids, in front of which was a statue, a huge monument to Imhotep. And he was talking about the significance of Imhotep's work, his presence, and how the builder of this pyramid not only led his elevation of his ancestors with Imhotep at the beginning of the temple, but had created 3.5 miles of tunnels inside the pyramid.
Yes.
And among the treasures, I think this is right, there were 14,000 stone vessels that describe the works of all of his predecessors. What's the point? The point is the importance of memory.
Yes.
The importance of our obligation, our duty to formalize and to create and maintain memory of everything that ever existed to this moment. And we have to be the bearers of that truth and the holders of that light. I want to thank Don Shelby. He says in our chat, hi, Al, thanks, and Mother Atum. Don Shelby, a celebrated journalist here in Twin Cities. Don, good to see your name. And I want to thank Sonia Alvarez. She wrote in the comments, thank you for your work in healing. This is to you, Sister Atum. There's so much evidence that shows the relationship between adverse community experiences and health. Atum Azzahir, thank you for your continuous leadership. My friend Michelle Madison joins us every week from out east, and she says she was not blessed to meet her maternal grandmother. She died when her mother was an infant, but she hopes to visit her homeland one day on the island of Antigua. Memory, again, memory connecting. So to what end? I'll have you close. We got about a minute left. The value, the proposition of connecting the ancient past to the futures that we have an obligation to co-author. How do we do that?
Well, first I want to, first of all, say thanks to everyone. And I think Don Shelby said my Mother Atum, and he's right. It is his Mother Atum too. We have agreed that he gets a chance to say that.
We got 10 seconds. We have 10 seconds.
Yes. Thank you so much. The memory is called Ka in Kemetic tradition. The Ka memory stays with us forever, from generation to generation. And at this point in time, we have to heal the memory because of our experience in this country. And we can do that and must. And that's where our freedom comes in.
Mother Atum, thank you so much. Ankh Uja Seneb. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.
Hotep.